Hi, welcome to my build of the Scammell Pioneer R100 heavy artillery tractor by Thunder models in 1/35th scale. I did think I'd do in just a single 30 to 40 minute long video, just showing the key areas and then the finished model. But since this is only my second plastic kit in 40 years, I thought I would do it in multiple parts from start to finish. I was thinking it would be good to share the full experience, particularly with new modelers, on what a new modeler like myself goes through tackling one of these modern kits. There'll be lots of ramblings on what I'm thinking and doing at the time. You can actually see an inbox review of this kit, and I'll put that in the playlist. But so we'll just follow the instructions for the time being. So let's do this. Okay, start with the engine. We've got A2, A3, and then the cylinder block, B7 and C8. Back in the day, when I first knew I was going to get back into modelling, at the time the Xuron snips were highly recommended, and I actually purchased these years ago. But as things change, and then the single wedge nippers came in, supposed to be a nicer, cleaner cut. I actually went out and got the God Hand ones, but I got these at a really good price. So you often see people, particularly the experts, just going straight in, snipping them off. But then you also get people who cut back and then come back in and trim it closer to. Look, I don't know. I mean, these cut really nicely. But if you want to go straight into it at the very beginning, you particularly for a novice like myself, you run the chance of perhaps damaging the part just through accessing it. I guess you take it as you see fit. The problem with these ones is they're very fine and delicate, so you shouldn't use them to cut through the heavy sprues, only the sprue gates themselves. So they've both got their place. I'll stick with these. I might just go straight into it because they are cutting very nicely. So without further ado, let's get all these cut up. It's annoying because they're actually, the one engine is split across several sprues. So we've got A's, B's, C's, D's, E's. So yeah, just bear with me. Okay, disappointingly, I lost the footage of assembling the engine and all the various components of it, which is unfortunate because the whole point was to show you the problems like a new modeler like myself encounters. And wow, did I have some problems with this engine. The relationship between the engine block and the cylinders in the pan there wasn't a great deal of positive location marks, and coupled with working under the camera and not having the magnivisor on, I encountered some problems. Noticeably, you can see the gap here, because one was slightly higher than the other. That kind of caused various other issues, which hopefully once it's all painted up and weathered, it won't be too bad. I guess I missed the chance to show you the problems I had. So what I've done is the bulk of it's done. There's a lot of other components I haven't put on yet because I'll paint them separately, but I'll show you one or two other bits. So looking at reference photos from the fuel pump, which lives down here, there's fuel lines, goes up to the rocker cover, and what I've done is I've just drilled some little holes to show them. They're not equidistant, which is surprising. So these two are grouped together with the third one in the end. You've got an end one here, and these ones kind of relate to the positions of the injectors, but for some reason these two are closer together. But yeah, so that's on the injector pump. I made some holes in the top and try to drill some holes so the lines will come out of there and go into the rocker covers. So these have all been glued together and cleaned up. Starter motor, same deal. I'll paint that separately. I'll paint it black. There's a few different reference photos I'm using, and some of them are different colours. The exhaust manifold, I'll do like a dark cast iron rusty colour. And then we've got a few other components which seem to be, it depends what reference photo you use. There's lots of different colours, but I'll pick one similar, like a steel or an aluminium type cover. And there's a few hoses and belts. This belt was very delicate to cut off, and it actually snapped, but I was able to just a tiny dab of extra thin, and it was joined together again. So that's really as far as we've got for the assembly. So we'll head to prime next and paint. Okay, let's prime the engine and its components. When I did my first plastic model recently, I tried Vallejo's polyurethane primer, and it just didn't work for me at all. So I came across Duke's models where he was doing his black basing series, and he was using Mr. Finishing Surfacer 1500 black. And I tried this, and what a difference. It goes down very easily, very smoothly, and gives you a silky smooth finish at the end. He was also using Mr. Colour Weblink thinner, and again, this was a game changer. Even using it for Mr. Colour's Aqueous range and Tamiya acrylics, it goes down again so much easier than using the acrylic thinners. So we'll use this as well. The airbrush is an Iwata HPC Plus. It's a 0.3mm needle in a 9mm paint cup. I've had this for a good few years because I do use it a fair bit for painting handrails and things for the card ship I've been building. So what we'll do is we'll mix this up, and I use a ratio of 60% thinners to 40% paint. So we'll just give this a mix. Mr. Finishing Surfacer, it's lacquer based, so it does smell very, very strongly. Doug's also used like tattoo ink cups for mixing his paint, and I find this so much easier as well. I can see why he does it. You can mix up very distinct volumes of paint so you can get your mix. I use pipettes as well, purely because just doing it by eye or doing it by looking at it, I'm not experienced enough to get the consistency the same. So by using this, I can get the correct consistency every time, and it's one less variable for me to worry about. What I've done is I've actually dispensed the leveling thinners into a smaller jar just for convenience, so I can access that easier enough. So I've just okay, we'll just give that a stir. I also set out a big sheet of, it's just tracing paper I think, but when it's folded up, it just means at the end of the session I can just roll everything onto it, wrap up and then throw it out in the bin. It does look a bit thin when you see it like this, but it will actually spray very well. So we'll just get the airbrush hooked up and then we'll make a start. As you can see, it's easy to just tip it in. There's no mess, no spills, no painty fingers. Pressure's about 15 psi, but with the 60-40 ratio, that's ample. So let's just get going then. So as you can see, it goes on very easily. It's very forgiving as well, because there's a couple of spots where I went in a bit heavy and it just smooths out and it gives a beautiful finish. And it's fine that it doesn't cover any details. You can still see the various nuts and bolts, and it doesn't fill in or cover any of that detail. So let's continue with the rest of the parts. Okay, so I originally mixed up, what's that? just over 1 mil of paint. So 0.5 mils of paint and 0.75 mils of thinner. And I've done all that. And I don't know if you can see in the paint cup, but there's still some to go. So it certainly extends the life of the paint, so you don't need a great deal. So here's all the bits primed. So as you can see, I did get some on my fingers, but it flashes off very quickly. So it's touch dry within a couple of minutes, so you can actually hold it and turn it around. And that's it all. I just missed a bit here. And that's it. So next part will be the color coats. So we use grey blue for the engine, and some of these details we'll paint up with metallics. Okay, let's get on with painting the engine now. So the call out asks for MiG 63. Now all the colours in the Thunder models are all MiG colours. The equivalent is Tamiya XF23 light blue, and I'll use this because I don't have any experience with spraying true acrylics, whereas these ones are lacquer based or thinner based, so it'll work better for my style. So already got some mixed up here again. Same ratio as the primer, 40% paint, 60% thinner, and using Mr. Hobby leveling thinners. So let's give this a go. Okay, so that's the main colour one. Might be a couple of bits to do. As you can see, the Tamiya is not as forgiving as the Mr. Surfacer primer. A couple of spots. Didn't take much for it to build up too quickly, whereas the 1500 self-leveling would kind of smooth out and tighten up. Spot there, couple of spots in the top covers. That's in places it will be kind of hidden anyway, so I think I'll kind of leave it at that. Maybe just touch up the oil pan a bit more, try and smooth that out, but on the whole, goes down very well. A couple of bits, but I mean, that's down to me. Okay, thanks. Okay, so let's spray the metal colour acrylic metallics now for the various components of the engine. I've sprayed this before in a previous model and I didn't get on very well with it. I think I used the exhaust and steel for a jet pipe. I found it very difficult to spray. So what I'll do is we'll give it a go anyway, and just to try and get a bit of colour variation, we'll try the dull aluminium, the Dura aluminium and dark aluminium on the different components and just see. Hopefully we'll see how it goes. So the first part, I'll just do the dull aluminium on this. I'm guessing I'll call it a fuel filter, I don't know what it is. Let's see how we get on. Now this is supposed to be ready for use. Windy much, a couple of drops. Okay. Let's see how we get on. Okay, seems to be coming out okay. Get my tweezers. What I'll do is I'll just paint the top part of the body and then I'll come in and probably brush paint the bottom side of it. I haven't changed the pressure at all. Still about 15 psi. There we go, it's starting to go off now. And I think that's what I remember experiencing before. Is it spray for a bit and then go off. And then as time went on, it would get harder and harder or shorter and shorter sessions before it go off. See how it goes. There we go, missed the whole stuff. I found cleaning the airbrush after using metallics a pain as well, because for ages after, it didn't matter how much times I cleaned it, you always seem to get little flakes appearing. It's actually going on pretty good actually. We'll stop that one. I'm not sure if I'm in camera there, but it's not too bad. So what I'll do is I'll just blow this out, give it a quick rinse, and then we can change to the Dura aluminium. Then we'll use that for the pump body, the fuel pump body. Okay, so I just sprayed what was left in the cap out, just onto the paper and tissue. Put a few drops of airbrush thinner through it as well and just blast it out. I'm not doing a full clean until I'm finished with all the metallics. So we'll do the Dura aluminium next. I have given it a good mix previously, but I'll just give it a shake again. I don't like these dropper balls, it seems very messy. Okay. And I'll use this for this. Let's see what we're doing. Okay. Certainly a lot darker than the previous aluminium images. A bit too much there, but it seems to flow it out very well, so that's okay. I actually think the pressure might be a bit too high. Come down in the pressure a little bit, I think. Okay, we'll leave that at that. Couple of days we'll come back and compare the different paints and see how they look next to each other. Okay, I'll just clean this out now and then we'll swap to dark aluminium. Okay, so that's a quick rinse of the airbrush again. We'll go to dark aluminium and we'll try different uses for different components. I was like 4 drops, it just covers the hole in the color cup. Okay, so the biting point of the flow is very, very short. So it's either nothing's coming out as I pull back, it's all at once. I can't seem to get it to do a fine transition like you can with the paints. So you just have to be careful, don't flood it. It's actually hard to tell if I've covered it. You definitely see it going on when it's heavy. But it seems to flow okay, which is good. It's almost like you need to just blast it on rather than try and build it up. Struggling to get come on. Yeah, this one's definitely the hardest of the ones I've done so far. I'm almost at full pressure and it's barely coming out. Okay, I might just call that one done because the trigger action now is like all the way back, nothing, and then it's all coming. Certainly the technique seems to be to just flood it as opposed to try and build it up like we were doing with paint, so I didn't use much at all. So let me clean this again and then we'll come back and have a look at the 3 different colours to see if we can see any difference actually. Okay, let's summarise what we've done here and what we can see. So the first component here, that was done with the dull aluminium. The fuel injector pump was done with the Dura aluminium, and then these two other components here was the dark aluminium. So I don't know if you can notice, certainly the dull aluminium is very bright compared to these ones here. There's a very slight difference between these two are together, between this one and these two. It probably doesn't pick up in camera, but there is a difference, but not much. It's hardly worth the effort, to be honest. So, okay, so second time using Vallejo's metal colour. I was probably a bit harsh the very first time I used it previously. It's not too bad. I think you have to change how you spray rather than build up light coats with, say, a lacquer or a lacquer acrylic. This is either you just blast it on and it seems to flow well. So when you think you've overdone it, it does kind of go and flow out. It was within a few minutes you could handle it carefully as well, which wasn't too bad. Certainly by the time I got to the third colour, now I don't know if it's the actual specific colour or composition or it's just a case of time, but when I cleaned the airbrush afterwards, there was considerable tip build up or tip dry build up, and that kind of contributed to the on-off trigger rather than being able to partially spray it. So as time progressed, you had to pull back more and more for the air until it was almost fully open before it started to flow. But yeah, it was worth the effort. I'll do some of the little details in some of the colours, some of this like bleed nipples or the gland nuts for the fuel. I'll do in brass or something, just to give a bit of variation. Okay. Okay, I'm going to spray up the exhaust manifold now. So I'm going to use the MIG colour in the instructions, which is MIG 42 Old Rust. This is a true acrylic. I haven't sprayed a proper full acrylic before, so we'll see how we get on. I watched the Ammo by MIG video and it does say it should be ready to use straight out the bottle. I'll just put a few drops in. And apparently you spray it on in very light coats. So that should suit my style a lot better anyway. Let's see how we go. Okay, it seems to be blocking a bit more. Oops, it's a bit heavy. Maybe a lot finer than that. Again, it's starting to block further back in the travel or the trigger. Just using air to dry it off a bit, and then I'll come back with some more colour. Okay, well that's gone not too bad. A lot better than I was expecting. Still has a problem where it's hard to modulate the flow. I think maybe some acrylic thinners would help. But on the whole, that went down not too bad for a first attempt at acrylics. I'll leave it at that. Okay, that's all the engine parts painted up now, so we'll get on to assembly. What I've done beforehand was just with the engine mounts, and what I'm assuming is just rubber joiners for various pipework. I've just painted them in Vallejo model colour, just by brush. There's another mount here as well. Also not shown, but what's included in the kit is foot wedge parts. So we've got the fan blades, there's a filler cap, and there's a very tiny, delicate throttle linkage as well. So I did go back onto the fuel pump and I tried different colours, metallics on some of the bits. It's not very clear, but it was to try and get a bit of definition. Also with the fan belt and pulleys, I just masked a thin line to represent where the belt would be, and then sprayed it up the same colour as the engine. Also the fuel filter, I just painted the body of it the same colour as the engine, and just hand painted the caps at the ends. Okay, so let's get these all assembled. We'll start with the exhaust manifold, which was done in the Scammell acrylic. I'll just use a gel super glue for that. Okay, I'm not sure how the Tamiya extra thin would work on the acrylic paint, so I'll just use a gel, and this is just a cheap gel. Also, you can buy commercial glue applicators like the Glue Looper, and there's a few others. This one is just a needle, a sewing needle that I've trimmed the end, and it works, it fills up with capillary action, so you've got a bit of a store glue. So we'll use that. I'll just put my visor on. So we won't need much. I'll just put it on a couple of the locations there. And I want to be sparing here because Don't want to get glue all over the place. Okay. That's the manifold on. Next, we'll do the starter motor. Now, I should be able to, because they're both lacquer, acrylic, lacquer paints, I should be able to use the Tamiya shitting. Oh my god. Shaky hands. The axis is actually quite difficult with the... Let's try again. I actually got a blob of glue. Ah, there we go. As you add more and more parts, it's going to be trickier to hold. I'll start with the bigger parts and work my way down to the finer ones. So we'll do the injection pump next. I'll just trial fit this because it's got a bit of a... Okay, so if you look at it from the bottom, it fits onto that section there. Okay. The next parts are these. I'm not sure what these are actually. The location for this one's not very defined because it sits on these semicircular areas here. And the pump pushes it out on an angle. So you have to do the pump first to get this position done. It's good. Now, I want to get this in the correct position because I don't want to be smearing glue. There we go. No. Let's try again. Okay, that's it. This next part here, there's two cutouts and it fits in these two ribs. Now, the sharp point of the ribs should coincide with the depth of the slot there. And again, just a bit of glue. Okay. And the last part I'll put on for this stage is just a fuel filter. Okay, so that's the majority of the parts on now. There is this component here which sits on the body of that. The hose locates into this and this joins onto the inlet manifold. So I'll do that later because what I want to do now is attach the fuel lines from the pump through the rocker cover. So what I will use for that is 0.05mm brass rod. I just need to bend it to shape. I'll do all this off camera because it's going to be quite tricky to work out the bend coming out the pump and then into the rockers. So I'll do these next, and then that will be the most delicate part done, and then we can finish the rest of the assembly. Okay. Okay, so I've put in the fuel lines now. I'm not sure how clear that is. It wasn't too bad actually. And what I've done is I've just given them a quick paint with Vallejo model colour, just a grey. just a bit thin super glue at the pump. I haven't glued them into the heads, so they can still move in and out a wee bit, but it's enough to secure them. Okay, let's continue on with the rest of the components. So next up, we'll do the front pulley and belt. So we'll be able to use extra thin on this one because they're both painted with Tamiya acrylics. Not sure what it is today, but my hands are so shaky today. Okay, so that's the front pulley one. Next, the next part we'll do is this thing here. While I was making the fuel lines, this little joint actually snapped. I had to re-glue it. It's going to be a pain to position this one. So see it? Oh, it's gone. Okay. So that fits into there and then glues onto there, but I don't know the angle for it to come off at. And then that fits into there. Don't know where it's gone. Okay. Oh, here we go. It's filled on here. So if that connects into that bit there, that's what I might do. I might glue this bit into here first. And then it can rest on here, and then we can come and join in here, on there, and then try and make this joint up. So let's see if I can do this first. I can just rest on there, and that appears to be where it sits in the instructions. And then if this bit is here, okay. that seems to be the way to go. So what I'll do is I'll leave this to go off for a bit because it's not going to take much to move it. And then I'll come back and have to glue into there, onto there, and onto that as well. So let's let this bit go off and then we'll come back. Okay, apologies, but I actually glued this bit up off camera. So what I did was super glue gel here to give me time to move it about. Then I lined this up here and used Tamiya extra thin. And then once that was kind of joining and that was joint, I put some super glue thin under here to lock this bit onto this barrel here. So I did it off camera. It was just very awkward to get in and do the little bits and pieces. So that's it. It's a poorly designed component, this, to have a join here. I don't know, I'm not an injection molding expert, but it would have been made more sense to do this part here in one and then join it down here. In hindsight, I should have just cut it off and just made a new bit from brass, because it was very difficult, especially with this weak connector here. Okay, so the last things to do now is the photo wedge. So what we'll do now is we'll put the oil filler cap on, and again I'll just use some thick or gel CA for that. So a tiny little dot on there will be enough. It's going to be awkward to pick up. Okay. That's that. Next part will be the front or the radiator fan. Again, using super glue gel. Okay. I guess the radiator blades would need to be bent a bit more, because obviously it would clip the oil filler. But once that goes off, I'll bend these out of the way. So the last part now is the throttle linkage. It's so fine. It's going to be and that sits in a little peg there and glues onto the end of the pump. So I'm going to change. Very tiny connection point. Okay, what I'll do next is a bit of thin just on the edge here, just to lock it onto there. And hopefully the 2 points should be enough. And essentially that's the engine made up. I'll glue that off camera because I'll have to get right into there. So just bear with me. Okay, I'm considering the engine now finished with assembly and painting. I did want to do weathering as well, but to be honest, at this stage I didn't think I was comfortable with that at the moment. I had a play around and I wasn't getting the effects I was expecting, so what I've done is I've actually put together just a styrene box with some plates and filler nozzles and things. I'll prime this up and then paint it in the model colours and then have a practice on the different effects before I actually apply them to the engine. So I'll put the engine aside for now. I was surprised the amount of difficulties I had initially, certainly with the assembly at the very beginning with the crankcase, the cylinders and the oil pan, just getting to line up. It was very difficult. And it's unfortunate I lost the footage because it was actually embarrassing how much problems I was having. On the kit itself, there's a few points where the locations, some of the features aren't very defined. And again, it was quite difficult to position and glue up satisfactorily, but got there in the end. Also in the footage it was lost, I went on about the cleaning up of mould seams on the various parts, and I thought I'd done a reasonable job, but once the paint went on, it's obvious I've got a fair bit of work to do in that as well in the future. So that's the engine done anyway. Like I say, we'll weather it in future episodes. Next part, we'll work on the gearbox. Okay. Thanks for looking in.